We want to welcome our very special guest, Ste7en Foster. He has a brand new book called The Last Alias. This is the book. I just read the whole thing. It's really a riveting memoir. Ste7en, I have to tell you first thing, this book is a page turner. And one of the things is you go through story after story about your life. And at one point I was wondering, each story is really interesting. And I'm like, where's this going? But it is all going somewhere. And it didn't really matter because I want to commend you because you just wrote a really, really good book and it's based on your life. So congrats on that.
Yes.
But I was just talking to someone last night and they said when they were reading it, they were like, how is he going to end this? And it was like, and then it wound up, they did all come together. And so I'm really glad of that. I like the disjointed nature of it, where you can come in and pick up at page 75, or you can start at the beginning or anywhere you can. And it's the same book.
Exactly. And we were talking last night and I still had 100 pages to go. And you said, oh, you're going to get to the really juicy parts of it. And you were correct. It's like, wow. Let me just do a quick synopsis here. You do tell these stories. It's a memoir, like I said. You have such great humor, though, which I really appreciated. You worked in the creative industry as advertising, correct? You did.
I was advertising first, and then I went into
the book goes into your successes at the height of your career. You go from copywriter to the anime world, Cody. I know you would like that. Where
I am in love with
you
that.
get these.
Yes.
Yes, you guys got to talk. He's a comic book fan, and at the height of your career, you are taking these anime films from Japan and you're dubbing them, casting them, rewriting them in better, because so many of these films, and you do a really good job of explaining. I really appreciated it, the technical side of it. As a editor producer, I really loved seeing how you did all that work, and all the work syncing the mouth, even though it was like English, is really fascinating. You ultimately, when you are out 100, was it 2006? Out one about, yep. Yeah. And you have that. You were in Wikipedia. Foster Eyes is, or what is it?
Wikipedia.
Urban Dictionary. Okay, Urban
Dictionary. So right next to like Rusty Trombone and Booty.
By the way, what does Foster Eyes really mean?
The actual clinical definition, verbatim definition, is fucking up something just because you can, or something. Which I see you gasping your eyes. Yeah, I don't agree with it totally, because I didn't fuck it up just because I thought I could. I fucked up the original anime because I thought I could make it better. So, which was the deal. So, and there's one show that I made so much better that it's now this cult
So the book
phenomenon.
continues with all these successes, and I have a direct question in a second, but it goes on to, from all of your successes, to an unhealthy, we'll call it a sex relationship, and I know you're going to correct me on that in a minute. You're diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which I know Cody has a question for you on that. And you are ultimately, and we just ended, which I think should be the whole year, Mental Health Week. And I couldn't think of a better time that your book would come out, and timing is so on point. But I think my first question to you is, at the height of your career, when you're getting all these accolades and out 100, there seems to be a lot in the writing that you don't seem to want to accept success. Am I right on that? And where do you think that comes from? Your childhood?
Yeah, that's so weird that you said that, because I don't know. It's some kind of fucked up vanity, humility, disjunct. I don't know. It's like when the anime fan, I never went to conventions. I never really met with anime fans. And it just was the whole thing that someone wanted my autograph was just so weird to me. I just couldn't, it didn't work. It didn't compute. And then now that I'm out of it and away from it, I've been like going on YouTube where all these ghost stories videos are, and like talking with the fans and answering their questions. And I don't know, now that I'm not in it, I'm real comfortable with it. And I don't know. Maybe it's because you're coming from puritanical white Protestant, WASP family, that you don't talk about your talents or your achievements, but I don't know. It's something that scrambles my brain though.
Well, one of the
I'm
things
not
you do
pleased with it.
say in the book is you hope that people can somehow find a little bit of themselves in it. And I did relate to, not on the same level, but there was the thing that you did with the anime in particular, and Cody, I know you'll appreciate this, is taking an opportunity, which is something I've been able to do, and running with it and developing. People have given me opportunities when I didn't really have maybe the expertise or the schooling that I should have had. But I was in my like late 30s. I took that opportunity and ran with it. I saw that in what you did with the anime world. You created this whole thing. And that is something that I think to be very proud of. And I'm just wondering if your childhood did, because you allude a little bit to your childhood, that your parents, talk a little bit about your childhood and your parents. Maybe sometimes it has to do with the way you grew up.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how yours was, but I mean, I came from very like beaver cleaver family. It was just my dad was a lineman, for a power company. My mom was a secretary, and I was a writer. And I mean, they just didn't know what to do with me. Like the one story in the book where I tell them I want to be a writer, and they're like, "Well, you could work for the post office."
Wow.
And I'm like, "What?" And so like, and she goes, "Well, they write they send letters." And I was like, "Oh, fuck you!"
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like always feeling like an alien, which then segues into when you grow up gay, you feel like an alien because you're just like you're not. Everything you do is branded no. So it just with this feeling of an outsider, and I hope that the book would make people feel a little bit more accepting of themselves and their different personas that they use for other people, and just not give themselves a break, at least, because we beat ourselves up so fucking much. It's brutal. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, one of the things, I mean, recently we just had National Coming Out Day, and we learned in your memoir that you were married and you have kids, correct? And I'm just wondering, you just said gay. Do you identify as gay? And did you know you were gay earlier? And can you just talk a little bit about that? Because you do talk about it in the book, but I'm just curious.
Yeah. It was just, I was always, I loved women. I thought women were amazing. And so I was like 90-10. And then, it just became 100 out of 100. It's really weird. I was on a podcast the other day and my son was there, and it was Whiskey Brothers. It was with some comedians, and they were talking, and I was talking, and I was like, he's having to hear all of this about him not, never planned.
Yeah. How old is he?
To be born, and
okay,
29 now.
He can handle it.
But I got divorced. Yeah, he goes. But like, I did love my wife when I was married to her. I really did. I fell in love with her, and but the marriage was bad, and I would have left her for a cactus. It would have been much more pleasant. But I just became gay, and I admitted to being gay, and the life changed. And the kids have been great about it. My kids have been really fantastic. I'm really
one part, and there's a lot of stories that come out, and one of them is, I'm going to skip to the New York story, because you tell Cody, he tells this great story of you're on the high of your career, you come to New York City, you stay at the Hudson, which I love so much, and you're of course.
Oh, you know Hudson?
You're writing up that hotel, and it's the Ian Schrager, right? Designed it.
Yeah.
And you are meeting with clients, and you do this vivid New York night. And I know what year it is now. It's right before 9/11, because you are out with clients and you're having drinks, and it's so fabulous. It reminded me of like the New York days, not pre-pandemic, but even earlier, and you talk about your night going to the Roxy, and you really want a night out at the infamous Roxy. Cody, do you remember the Roxy?
I don't remember the Roxy.
One of those warehouse clubs. And talk a little bit about that night, because you want to experience the club. If anybody has drugs, you don't achieve any drugs that night, but it sounded like an amazing night in New York. How fun was that to write and like relive that?
It was, I mean, the first part was great. It was really, really strange. I was in New York. It was totally everything I wanted to be. I was living the dream, and I went to the club, and I did score drugs that night. But I'm there, and I meet these people, and the second people I ask, they're like from Dallas, and they're like, "You're from Houston? I'm from Dallas." And then we're doing drugs in the bathroom because I wanted to see it enhanced. And I was
Special
really
K,
wasted,
right?
stoned,
Was the drug?
and yeah, it was K. And I would dance with these two guys on the dance floor, and they were like, "You want to come back home with us?" And I'm like, "No, I'm a little stoned for that." But I left. It was great. Left on a high. I took a biggest bite of the apple that I could, and then I woke up the next morning, and planes are crashing into the building, and everything went down.
Yeah, I think you describe it as you called work back home in Texas,
Yeah,
and
and she was
the person that answered the phone was like, "Oh my God, don't you know what happened? And are you okay?" And it was 9/11.
Yeah, and so I moved to the television, and I turned it on, and I'm still talking to her. And as she's talking, I see the second plane coming. I didn't know there was a second at the time, and I'm just watching it happen. And then it hit, and then I don't know why, but then everything went dead. The phone was gone, and then it was just a scramble. And I drove 3 days later. I drove back to Houston because there were no flights. It was great.
I
You remember
do.
that
Yeah,
time?
I
It
was in
awful.
LA.
I mean, it was like a
Right.
short version of the pandemic.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally remember that, and I couldn't help but think, like, because here you are, literally on a high, and it's like the other direction of it, and it kind of ends up being a little bit of kind of the way the Last Alias reads. Is there's a lot of highs, and then there's some really downward spirals that happen in your life. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah. And I did what I really did like the way it was structured, that you're going along, and it is funny despite the funereal cover of it's so dark.
See, we think,
but
I think it's super sexy.
it's funny. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's what makeup and lighting does. But you're going along just like life. You're moving along. Things are funny. Things are this. Things are that. And then last fourth of the book, you're like, everything goes to shit, and which is like many people have in life, which is what my experience was I was just walking along and then got blindsided by the RA and mental illness and things like that. And so that's why I wrote the book, is so hopefully that people could know they're not alone.
We don't want to give too much away. And Cody, I want to get to your question in a second, but I want to, mine precedes this.
Okay.
There's a guy, and we talk about sex over here a little bit. So there's a point in the book.
No.
There is a point in the book where it shifts dramatic gears, and you put a warning on there, like it's a whole page, like warning, and it's about a guy that you end up having a sexual relationship with that we can talk about it in a second. I think my first question is, why did you feel the need? You're clearly talking about mental illness. You're talking about your life I think you allude to even rape as a 6-year-old boy. Why did you feel the need to put that warning there? I'm just curious. And yeah.
No. It's a legitimate question. Totally. I deal with all the personas that I have in this book, these aliases. And we all have versions of ourselves. We're a son or daughter, we're a parent, we're a brother, a sister, we're a worker. We do all these things. And I thought I have to address the sexual self as well. And if I was going to do it all across the board, I need to be that honest with my sexual self. And so I put it in there, but it's very graphic. Don't let your mom read it. I mean, my mom.
Did you read it, Cody?
I have read parts of it, so I can't wait to wait to read it in its entirety.
You can.
No, I'm going to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
We actually have a deal. We're going to do a book swap. So
yeah.
Oh, you read the book?
No,
Steve has.
I have it, and we're getting together tomorrow. I'm just gonna.
That's not fair. You're talking about my book, and you got what you.
No. I have a book that I'm going to loan to him so he can read the book.
Okay. Sorry. So I just felt it should be warned because it's real. It's very graphic. It's really, and the marketing side of me was like, well, there's never been a graphic sex scene in a memoir, so maybe that's good. But as far as like, I didn't want the story in there on the eve of it going to the printer. I was still on the fence about it, and I was ready. I wanted to cut it really bad. And I talked to 2 girlfriends who'd read it, and I respected their opinion. And they were like, you have to keep it in because it's the most honest story there is. And every girl is going to relate to this because they have a Kendall in there.
The character that we're talking about is called Kendall. You have this amazing sex. It's very detailed, very erotic. I was turned on actually in reading a lot of it, but it also seems unhealthy in a lot of ways. And I'm wondering, with where you're at now, do you still, because it brought up a lot in me of a relationship I had before that I knew this person wasn't right for me, but the sex is really good. And I wanted, in my mind, I know I always made up this sort of, not fantasy, but I know we weren't necessarily on the same page, but that person could text me or call me and I'm like right there for them. And I think we often find ourselves in those situations that aren't even. Would you still go back to a Kendall today? And I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. And I was talking with a reader that called me last night. We had like an hour and a half conversation about it, and he said it was like he described sex as hunger, and I was like, I totally get that. I'm totally on that page. And then he said that in that story, it was like I was hungry, but I wasn't getting fed. And I said, like empty calories. And he said, yes, like empty calories. And that's what it was, because I think we have those sexual relationships, very intense, but kind of then they're willing to give. Like, I think what you were alluding to is you wanted more with this guy than he was willing to give you. And that's a trap you get into, and you go down the spiral, and you have to fight your way out of it, because it's hard when you find this one that's so irresistible and hits all your buttons, but emotionally they are bad news for you.
Cody, news. I know you know we've talked about this together.
I know about the button for sure. Go ahead. What were you gonna say, Steve?
No, I wanted
Cody, you wanted to ask a question, because one of the things we learned in the book. Yeah, tell us, Cody.
He did, like Steve mentioned earlier, you were diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. My mother was also diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I was just kind of curious about how that affected your mental health and mental stability, and what you did to actually combat that and to take that on.
It triggered my nervous breakdown. I don't want to be plot spoiler, but it ruined everything. I mean, it took away my career. It took away my life. And I mean, I was literally like lying in bed screaming, and it took the doctors a long time to find a medication that worked. But it was, I wanted to like call everyone who ever said they had arthritis and apologize to them, going like, I had no idea what you were talking about, which is what I really like about the book is I hope I explain things just a little bit so people can understand what mental illness is like and what chronic pain disease is like, because it's like God or sex. Until you meet God and until you have sex, you have no idea what they're talking about. You think
I'm using that,
but you really don't. I mean, though, right? I mean, you can imagine, but until you do, it's like, oh, this is totally different than what they said it was, and that's what the pain was. That's what the mental illness was, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I mean, I go to RA chat rooms, and there are still people that like they're in that pain all the time, every day. And no medication has worked for them, but I was really lucky they found that thing, and I'm pain free now, and so I'm really thankful. I'm lucky. But for that while there, those 2 years was awful. Is your mom severe, or is she like
stress?
It
brings it on, so she just has to like make sure she needs her stress. So
it's funny because that seems to be a theme in the book, and your doctors even tell you that about how stress and things can just layer upon layer. And I'm just curious, you already said that the book does deal with mental health, and I think it's such an important read for everybody, whether we all are suffering in some way, and there are levels of this. It's your book is really timely on so many levels. You mentioned in the book that there were some friends that really are there for you. And I'm just curious, that are you still in contact with those friends? Because there's some really touching moments when it was hard to read at times, and you feel for you what you're going through, and you really gave a descriptive idea of what it can feel like to be that trapped and want to crawl yourself into a hole. But there's these friends that there's a beautiful moment that you're out shopping and your friend's all excited to show you Sprouts, which is the alternative to Whole Foods. And he's excited and he's a workout person and going to the protein area, and you just cannot get out of that store fast enough. And when he finally takes you home, he looks around your apartment and he gets it. And he really steps up to the plate. Talk about those friends, and are you still friends with those that helped you in that period?
Dedicate the book to them. I call them the Magnificent Seven. It's like my parents, my sister, and Fred, Jim, Dale, and Mona. And yeah, Fred, with that Sprouts day, I ran into the house and I hid behind all these barricades that I built because I didn't want they to get me. And he looked around and he saw that it looked like a madman's house, and he called Mona and he said, like, we're in trouble. And so they took me to get okayed, and if I need to go in the hospital or anything like that, and that started the healing. And yeah, they're all very close. Like, we had a hurricane 2 years later, and they came and got me because they knew I wouldn't be able to be on my own, and they took me to their house and I stayed there, and they saved my life.
Wow.
And I was lucky. I talked to another friend who had a mental health crisis, and she did it alone, and I don't know how she survived it, because I wouldn't, if I didn't have them, I don't think.
And then real quick, what is...
And especially now with COVID.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you had. Well, it's like COVID. I think the only way we're getting through COVID is we're like making these connections with people that we have that are like, it's the only thing that's holding us together. And it's just, you really realize that you have these bonds with these other humans that somehow keep you sustained, and they heal you and help you, and you feel understood. And it's just, I think it's the only fabric that's keeping the nation from tearing itself apart, because we're so divided. And the only thing that keeps us together is the relationships with our friends and our family, which is so magical and so beautiful.
Ste7en Foster, I want to thank you so much. The book is so good, The Last Alias. It really is a page turner. Your storytelling, your humor, along with important information that is your story of mental health. It's very timely, and I really I'm not that quick of a reader. I read this in 3 days and loved it, so I can't say it highly enough. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me on the show. I had a really good time.
Thank you.
Where can people follow you real quick before you go?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. You can get the book on Amazon, and you can follow me on Instagram at Ste7_Foster. And it's Ste7 with a 7, which the book explains. Instead of a V, it's spelled with a 7. And then you can get me on Facebook, Ste7 Foster, with a V or 7. I can get both. But follow me. It's everyone's been really sweet about the book and reaching out to me, and come on. It's great. It's been really good. Thank you, everybody who's read it and liked it and sent me a message. Thank you so much, and thank you for reading it, and thank you for having me on the show, which is awesome.
We'll put everything on Tag's podcast as well. Thank you so much, Ste7en.
Thanks a lot. Bye, you guys.
Nice to meet you as well.
Bye.
Oh my gosh.
Pleasure.
I cannot wait for you to get this book. It's so good. You're going to love it.
Me too.